Whether you love the designs of the Salmon Run Bosses or hate them, there's no denying that they are pesky. When they have their sights locked in on you, there is no going back because they do not give up. It's either you or them. Luckily for us, there are various ways to defeat each boss as they are not all the same. Each have their own weak points and strengths, which leads us to the topic of today's video. Today, I will be rating Salmon Run Bosses on the following categories: design, difficulty, and annoyance. But please keep in mind, I tend to play as a solo player in Salmon Run, and if I'm not playing solo, I'm playing with my sister, which means a lot of my perspective when I discuss the difficulty for Salmon is coming from what I perceive by my random matchups. So my experience and what I've witnessed may differ from yours. I will also be excluding Grisco weapons from consideration for how difficult a Salmon Run boss is, because Grisco weapons are supposed to give you a boost compared to the average weapon, and these weapons aren't an everyday occurrence, so I'd rather reflect and judge Salmon Run bosses on the average gameplay. Then, as a gag, I will be rating how edible I think they are, which is inspired by the gluttonous Louis from the Pikmin franchise. If you haven't played Pikmin before, I highly recommend giving it a try. But to give a quick summary, in Pikmin they have a Critterpedia dedicated to the different enemies or critters you come across, since not all enemies in Pikmin are exactly hostile. And in addition to being able to look back on the critters you've encountered, you also have notes provided by the character Olimer, who gives details about the species you're observing. Later on, you can unlock Louis' notes, and his goes into depths in a completely different route from Olimer's. Instead, his notes go into detail about how edible a creature is or how to cook it. Honestly, if Louis was an employee for Grisco, he'd be fired on the spot for trying to eat the eggs. In fact, this gives me an idea for a suggested mode in Salmon Run where you have to defend your eggs from being stolen by inklings or octolings who deflect it. Anyways, before I get carried away, what's up, Sarah Butts? It is Little Lemon Drop dropping in with another video. How are you? I hope you're doing well. And if I haven't wished you yet, Happy New Year! Although, in my opinion, the new year doesn't really start until February. That's when it actually hits me. Now, let's get on with today's video. Starting off, we have the steelheads, which are incredibly large and intimidating in stature, but move excruciatingly slow. For regular Grisco weapons, shooting steelheads with ink has no effect, since their body is covered with protective scales that the average Grisco weapon cannot pierce. Instead, the only way to defeat steelheads is by firing ink at the bombard's head as it inflates. In terms of design, I would give the steelhead a 5 out of 5. They give me the creeps. I think seeing them in the wild would give me nightmares. If anything, I feel like they have the potential to be even more unsettling. If they were to introduce a new King Salmonid, I think the steelhead deserves a king version. As for difficulty, I would give the steelhead a 2 out of 5. It's pretty straightforward on how to defeat it. I think the problem more so lies in the fact that they are a nuisance in numbers, especially during the high tide and if your teammates are ignoring it. However, because they move incredibly slow and will only throw bombs once a player is in their range, you don't have to prioritize them immediately if a more high priority boss is present. And because they have to throw their bomb, it can even be safer to be right next to Steelhead at times, since they cannot directly attack players near it. And then, it helps that the Steelhead retains any damage that was previously made to the bombs it launched, instead of refreshing. Overall, I would say its appearance is more scary than its actual attack in-game. As for annoyance, I give them a 4 out of 5. As I said before, they are a nuisance in numbers, especially during high tide and if you're with a team that ignores them. As for munching, I give them a 0 out of 5. They do not look edible. They do not sound like it either. Their body is covered in hard protective skin, which just sounds unappealing, and I'm sure Grisco would agree. From one nuisance to another, next up we have flyfish. If you don't know what a flyfish is, consider yourself lucky, but anytime this boss is on the map, you're about to find out whether this shift is going to be a breeze or not. The flyfish is basically a small fry piloting a contraption that launches missiles. These missiles can lock onto a player, and a direct hit from one can result in an instant splat. They are also invulnerable to most attacks as they are covered in ink-repelling armor. Because of this, players must often destroy the flyfish's set of launchers in order to defeat it. In terms of design, I would give them a 5 out of 5, but for reasons opposite from the steelhead. While the steelhead is creepy, flyfish are just little gremlins. Small fry in general are grems, and I think the design of the flyfish perfectly encapsulates this. I love it. I can't imagine anything better for it, honestly. No notes. As for difficulty, I give them a 4 out of 5. In the beginning, they were difficult for me, but over time, they definitely helped me get better at aiming when I throw my spot bombs, and so I feel more certain in myself when facing off against them. As for my teammates, not so much. You can be at the highest rank for Salmon Run and you can still have teammates that don't know what to do. There has been a countless amount of times where I watch a teammate run up to a fly fish and shoot ink at it. And when they realize it's not working, ran away. And like, I would give the benefit of the doubt if we were just starting Salmon Run and we were still interns, but not when we're executive. At this point, or at some point, you should have learned, you should have looked into it. When I first started Salmon Run, my sister made me play the tutorial so I wouldn't grief my teammates, just for my teammates to end up griefing me. Anyways, the flyfish is definitely a nuisance, especially numbers, just like the steelhead, but it's even worse because the flyfish has the ability to lock on 2 players, while the steelhead will only engage in attacking when a player is in range, and even then, the steelhead isn't throwing a bomb that's locked onto the player. The flyfish though is launching missiles that are, and this is especially troublesome if the base is not inked to make a smooth running for the missiles, or when it's a high tide and enemies are squeezing in. As a result, you want to pay attention to your surroundings when flyfish are present, as they are a high priority boss for a reason. Even without the presence of other flyfish, having just one constantly targeting you or your teammates can end up getting the best of you. In terms of annoyance, 5 out of 5, to no surprise. But I also think a lot of this annoyance also stems from having teammates that don't know what to do. For edibility, 3 out of 5. The flyfish is still a small fry at the end of the day. Take it out of its vehicle and it's like a yummy little popcorn bite. But I'm not always in the stacking mood, so I wouldn't rank it any higher. Following the flyfish, we have the steel eel. The steel eel is a salmonid controlling a steel fish head that consists of jerry cans shooting down ink. These jerry cans can instantly spot players and deflect ink. The only way to defeat a steel eel is by targeting where the pilot's at, which is at the tail or rear end. In terms of design, 3 out of 5. I don't hate it, but I'm also not in love with it. It's a bit of an afterthought for me. If you were to discuss salmonid bosses, my mind wouldn't immediately shift to the steel eel. And in my opinion, the design doesn't scream eel enough to me. It's more like just a big fish or long one. But then again, I'm probably biased because the eels in Mario games scared me since I was a kid, and so this design feels like nothing in comparison. If anything, I think they could have done a swordfish, and so if the player they target gets hit once by the pointed sword nose, they would get instantly spotted. However, I do like the design of the pilot by themselves. I think the mask and hair is a subtle difference from just your average chum. For difficulty, I give steel eels a 2 out of 5, mostly because of the same reasons why I gave steelhead such a score. A nuisance in numbers, but definitely not a high priority unless you're in a high tide situation, as it still takes them some time to get to their target. If anything, I would say the steel eel acts more so as a supportive role. Their strength lies in supporting other salmonid bosses to put pressure on their target. For example, being chased down by a steel eel and having flyfish target you, causing a player to move in disarray, or a scrapper shoves you into the ink spread by the steel eel. I would also say that it's very rare for me to see a teammate not know how to defeat such an enemy. There's only been a few times where I've watched someone try inking the face of the steel eel without realizing they need to go for the salmonid that's piloted it, which gives me hope, unlike the flyfish. And if you move wisely, you also have the ability to defeat steel eels on your own. Overall, not the worst salmonid boss to come across. As for being a problem, I give them 1 out of 5. I don't find them that annoying, but maybe it's because I'm more so frustrated at the other salmonid bosses that are targeting me in that moment. And if you keep a calm head, you can get through this and take them out. Again, the pilot by themselves is cool, and I see its subtle differences from a regular chum, but it's not that drastic, and so for edibility, I give them a 5 out of 5 because I think it is a fish I would eat in real life, and I think I definitely enjoy it more than the flyfish or steelhead. Another salmonid boss that I believe plays a supporting role is the drizzler. The drizzler makes its way around the map by using a metal umbrella to fly around. Once it lands, it will then use its umbrella as a shield from which it will aim its missile or projectile. This projectile will then rain down ink that is similar to an ink storm. Due to its umbrella shield, you cannot attack the drizzler while it is in defense mode. However, there are still ways to defeat it. One of the ways is to wait for the drizzler to flip upside down after firing its projectile. It appears that the recoil from its weapon causes the drizzler to be left in a vulnerable state, and you are then able to shoot ink at it. Another method is to deflect the projectile back to the drizzler. By doing so, you are able to defeat the drizzler in just one hit, or if the drizzler has landed on uneven terrain, you can take the opportunity to attack from below while the drizzler is shielded from above. In terms of design, I give the drizzler a 2 out of 5. I don't hate it, but I don't necessarily like it either. I was gonna give it a 3 out of 5, but then I would say that I like the steel eel's design more than the drizzler. If anything, I think the pilot of the steel eel on its own is cool, but I don't find myself thinking that for the drizzler. with or without the umbrella. I don't really care for its design. For difficulty, I give the drizzler a 1 out of 5. Unlike the fly fish getting hit by the ink storm, does not create an instant splat for your inkling, but I mean, you should still be cautious of how much damage you're taking. I just think that this boss alone is not the strongest threat, as you can survive its attack. It's more so a supportive boss. The times that a drizzler does splat me is because I took too many combined hits from other salmonids, but I've never been splatted by a drizzler on its own. It's always been an enemy's team effort. But even with a bunch of drizzlers, I just don't find a drizzler that much of a nuisance. Also, I'd also give it a 1 out of 5 for being annoying. If anything, it's mostly my teammates that are annoying me by ignoring the drizzler for too long, especially when we need to reach our egg quota. As I've said before, the drizzler's attack works well paired with other salmonid bosses. So for example, I've taken damage by a scrapper shoving me, and then the drizzler's ink storm adds to this, causing my inkling to splat. But on its own, I just think it's unlikely, and even with 2 drizzlers on the map, you can take it out. You will survive. They're not high priority enemies, and I also get why players will ignore them for a while to prioritize other salmonid bosses. For edibility, I give them a 4 out of 5. I feel like the steel eel would taste better, but the drizzler seems like an average fish I would eat, and it's a bigger size than small fry too. Next up on our list, we have the stinger, and apparently they aim for the player furthest away from them before firing, which I think that's a lie. I feel like they always aim for me. They have it out for me, but personal feelings aside, for now, the stinger is a salmonid boss that sits atop cooking pots placed on top of a gas burner. They often appear at shorelines, but depending on the map and if it's high tide, this can change. Anyways, they often target players from across the map, and if you're not too careful about dodging its attack, it can splat you. Its attack is much stronger than the drizzler since it's focusing in on you. To defeat them, you must knock the pots off the stack until the stinger lands on the burner, which is very satisfying to do. For its design, I would give the stinger a 5 out of 5. I love it. It goes so well with the theme, with the concept, and this is what I would have wanted from the drizzler. I feel like the drizzler needed something more. It was underdressed, especially to give off the vibe that this is a salmonid boss, and the stinger delivers on this. I can look at the stinger and know that that's a boss enemy for sure. Overall, it's well done and quick to come to mind when thinking of Salmon Run. For difficulty, I'm going to go halfway and say 3.5 out of 5 because there are times where it can be a 3 for me, but then certain times it's a 4, especially depending on the map and what weapon you have. For instance, some maps during high tide, it's a lot easier to get to the stinger and knock them out, but certain maps you gotta make a journey over and then make a journey back on retrieving the eggs after you defeat it. It also sucks if you get splatted on the way over and none of your teammates are nearby. Even worse, they're on the other side of the map fighting against other high priority salmonid bosses, so you're doing the walk of shame until a teammate revives you. But I guess that's why they intentionally target the player that's farthest from them, because if that player gets splatted, they are losing time by finding another player to revive them. Those seconds that can be used to retrieve eggs and fight salmonids are going down the drain. Overall, it's best to work with your team on how to effectively handle stingers. One of my pet peeves is when you defeat a stinger with your team and then you're the only one that collected its eggs. The rest of your teammates are rushing over to the next boss, and it's like, we're still gonna fail this if we don't reach the egg quota. The quota isn't about how many bosses you defeated. Anyways, I give the stinger a 5 out of 5 on being annoying. Get them off of my map. I love their design, don't get me wrong. But that doesn't mean I'm happy to see their face. They are a problem combined with other high priority salmonid bosses, and it's bad enough that a lot of players ignore the flyfish. Don't get me started on when they include the stinger as well. Even worse, when there's multiple stingers and flyfish on your map, you should never have 2 of either salmonid bosses. 1 is already bad enough. For edibility, I think 2 out of 5. When I looked into it, according to the Salmonid Field Guide, it is revealed that some of the small fry that make up fish sticks are recruited to become stingers, and so I think it's only fair to give it the same rating, or at least similar as the flyfish den. Next is the scrapper, and you would think based on its name, it would put up more of a fight, but not really. I don't think it lives up to its name, or well, I kinda see it. Maybe it's because I expected more hands-on fighting with fists when I hear the term scrapper, so that's on me. But this boss is definitely aggressive and eager for a fight. They move quickly compared to other bosses and leave behind a large trail of ink. However, the only way to deal damage against this is to shoot its tail, which is located at the back. You can achieve this by dealing enough damage to its shield that it stuns the scrapper. Once this is done, you have the opportunity to attack without the scrapper moving, or if you're working with another teammate, you can attack the tail while the scrapper is facing someone else. I think it's only fair that I give the scrapper a 2 out of 5 for its design, since I gave the same score for the drizzler, and this is because the salmonid that is paired with the scrapper is the same one as the drizzler. They're the same salmonid, I'm pretty sure. The same design. They're just equipping different armor, a different fighting style. The drizzler is more on the defensive end and is a supporter, while the scrapper is more aggressive. But when I see them together as a pair, I like their designs a lot more. As a duo, I give them a 3 out of 5. They complement each other, but individually, my issue with the scrapper's design is for the same reasons as I mentioned for the drizzler. It's not a bad design, but I don't see anything about it that has this wow factor for me. That gives me a reason to score it higher, although if I had to choose between the two, then I like the scrapper a lot more, but maybe that's because if it's targeting you, you're going to know. So it's easier for me to envision a scrapper when I think of Salmon Run versus a drizzler for that reason. As for difficulty, I'd also give the scrapper a 1 out of 5. This one, I never really have to worry about my teammates not knowing what to do. Only once or twice have I seen a teammate repeatedly ink at the shield and not realize you need to go for the tail. You can stun the shield, but the average weapon cannot ink through it. If a player is going to get the hang of defeating any of the Salmon bosses first try, this one is definitely making the list. And if you want to play wisely, the scrapper is a great way to get eggs into the basket with the least amount of effort. Since they chase you down, you can just lead them to the basket. When I see them, they're like a breath of fresh air from all the calamity, especially when we need to reach that egg quota. For being annoying, the scrapper is also a 1 out of 5. Even when there's a group of them targeting you, it's not that bad. You can get out of that situation and slowly take each one out. You don't need to panic. See them doesn't set me off like it does a flyfish. Instead, my teammates annoy me more, especially if they're running out to shore to defeat a scrapper, rather than letting the scrapper come up to the egg basket, because there's no need to take up more time transporting its eggs. As for edibility, because it's the same salmon as the drizzler, I'm going to have to give it the same score again, which is a 4 out of 5. Up next are the moths, and they have the ability to swim through floors and walls to get to the player. You can be at the top of a fish stick and the moths will still find their way to you. However, they cannot touch grates as they don't have the ability to swim through it. As a result, they won't target players standing on top of grates and will find a new target instead. While submerged, the moths are invulnerable and a fishing bobber will be visible in its place. This helps the player keep track of where the moths are, and once it's locked onto a spot, bright rings will appear warning the player that it's coming. Once they emerge, they will immediately splat any player that is caught in their jaws. Because moths are invulnerable when submerged, you need to time it when throwing a bomb as they emerge, or you can fire ink at it while exposed, but I would highly recommend against that as it's really inefficient for time. For its design, I give the moths a 5 out of 5. I enjoy its design. It reminds me of a pink sunfish. You'd think that the moths would be this intimidating large salmonid because of its face, and yes, it is still large, but it's also really round, which is why its size reminds me of a sunfish, and I like the sunfish. I also like the color, and it makes me wish we had a couple more salmon bosses that were rocking the coral color. And while I can give the moths a high score for its design, I cannot say the same for its difficulty. For difficulty, I give the moths a 2 out of 5. Once you get the hang of it with the timing, you will send moths flying with ease. They're also a great salmon boss to lead to the egg basket, similar to the scrapper. Overall, not that bad of a salmon boss to face against. And then, for annoyance, I give them a 3 out of 5. This is because they tend to get me when I'm the last player standing, and my specialty is something like the Booyah Bomb. Because of this, you're left in a vulnerable state, and if there's no other players present, the moths will target you. Using your specialties in Salmon Run does not leave you invulnerable, and so it's really frustrating because one moment I think that I can revive everyone, but then the moth comes in and crushes that hope. For edibility, I give them 5 out of 5 because that is one tasty looking fish, although I hear that some fish are not very yummy, so if the moths are the same as a sunfish, then looks must be deceiving. In that case, I would give them a 1 out of 5, but that's only if Splatoon devs were to confirm that the moths are like a sunfish. And if the moths were not enough to make you hungry, this boss just may do it for you, which is the griller. The griller is a barbecue armor grill with salmonids inside, and out of all the bosses to be chased by, I'd say the griller is the most relentless. They will chase down whoever they target, which is marked by a laser pointer. They are also accompanied by small fry, which can swarm the player if they're not paying attention, and they will instantly splat a player if they are run over. Because their armor is impenetrable, players have to attack the exposed tail that's sticking out of the griller. By doing so, it will stun the griller and reveal a bunch of spinning tails that the player must then hit. For its design, I'd give the griller a 5 out of 5. I like it, it's still intimidating without having to do too much, and I like to think that the griller is the equivalent of an Omnidroid, which is basically the droid you see in the Kratos movie. I can imagine my inkling feeling tense if she were lost and came across a griller. Also, the sound it makes definitely adds to the design, the tension. As for difficulty, I'm giving the griller a 5 out of 5. You need to be efficient and you need your team to be working with you. If a teammate slips up, it can throw the whole thing off. For example, I've had teammates that kept running around the map and it made it more difficult for us to efficiently put eggs in the basket. It also made it more straining for us to pin down the griller because it's constantly on the move for its target. And another thing is, you have to watch out for the small fry that accompanies it. Sometimes your team is too focused on the griller, and so the small fry may overwhelm your teammates one by one. And then you're wasting time reviving your teammates instead of defeating the griller and transporting eggs to the basket. Overall, this boss in my opinion depends on you and your team. It's very difficult to carry griller wave on your own, and you need to be mindful of your surroundings to not get crushed because your teammates can grief you. They can accidentally lead a griller over to crush you, even if it's not targeting you. And then, to no surprise, I give the griller 5 out of 5 for being annoying. I'd also give it 5 out of 5 for my teammates annoying me. I have so many stories about teammates griefing me during griller raids, but I will get into that another time. The griller itself, I grimace. As for being edible, that is cooked salmonids. Those are cooked fish. 5 out of 5. No explanation needed. From one boss to another, we have Goldie, which is a really cute name. Goldies are a rare boss that appears in Salmon Run. They show up during Rush and Goldie Seeking, but they may also appear during Fog Waves. For Goldie Seeking, you're trying to find the Goldie hiding in the gushers. Once found, the Goldie will retreat to another gusher and you must shoot after it with ink. By doing so, the Goldie will drop eggs for you to transport back to the basket. While during Rush, the Goldie will relentlessly attack the player along with glowflies. On the bright side, there's no extra hurdles players need to jump to defeat a Goldie. You defeat them by spraying ink on them like you would any chum or small fry, as they do not wear any protective armor. With that said, I think the Goldie has a cute design. I give it a 5 out of 5. It is definitely a nod to Roman culture as the Goldie wears a toga and is a shimmering gold. It can also just be a nod to Roman statues in general. I also like their unique swirl pattern scales and its color makes them stand out, but in a good way. Especially with waves like Rush, Fog, and Goldie Seeking, I think it's good that the color choice of the design makes it pop out rather than stay hidden, especially in Fog Waves where they're the most eye-catching for me. As for difficulty, I give it a 2 out of 5. I think Fog Waves in general are more difficult, but I don't see that as something that is specifically made for the Goldie, cause technically all Salmonid bosses during Fog Waves are more tedious as you need to pay more attention to your surroundings and where your team is. Then for Goldie Seeking, the Goldie doesn't fight the player, instead it retreats to the next gusher. If anything, Rush is where Goldies are an actual threat, but depending on what weapons are up for rotation, Rush can be a breeze, especially if you have a roller on your team. And in general, it's easy for new players to figure out what to do against a Goldie, and that's just shoot it. Same thing for annoyance, I would give it a 2 out of 5. The most annoying I find a Goldie is only during Rush, and even then, it's really not that bad if you got great weapons in rotation and when you and your team know what you're doing. As for eating a Goldie, I give it a 1 out of 5 because its color makes me feel like it tastes like metal. I don't know, they don't give off the vibe that they'd be yummy and I don't really want to eat them either. Another boss with its own special wave is the Mothership. The Mothership spends most of its time high above the map, that it prevents players from attacking it. When it does draw close, it's preparing to vacuum eggs out of the basket, so make sure to shoot it when it's near. One of the notable details about the Mothership is that it carries lesser salmonids, which are dispatched by flying salmonids called Chinooks, I think. And while I was looking into more information about the Mothership, I found out that the Mothership is often deployed as the last resort of the Salmon Army, which I thought was cool. For its design, I give the Mothership a 2 out of 5 on its own. It's not an inherently bad or ugly design, but I just feel like that I associate the Chinooks more with the special wave rather than the Mothership itself, so if we were to include the Chinooks with its design, then I give it a 3 out of 5. It's kind of like looking at a flying saucer without the alien. You need the alien to go with it, and that's how I feel about the Mothership and Chinook. For difficulty, I'd say it's a 1 out of 5. Even if you have a short range weapon, you still have your teammates to back you up, or your special weapons such as the killer whale are effective. Compared to other special waves such as Griller, it's easier to recover when you make a mistake or someone from your team sleeps up. Overall, I can't recall a moment where I dreaded a mothership level. Same thing for being annoying, I give it a 1 out of 5 because I can't think of a moment where I loathed a mothership level. If anything, it's actually one of my favorite special waves. And then for edibility, I give it a 4 out of 5 because it's basically a cooler with a bunch of fish in it, although I probably have to cook the fish first because it wasn't a cooler, and so that's why I give it 1 point down. At least the griller gives me cooked salmonids. The next boss on the field we have is the fish stick, which takes the name at a literal sense. The fish stick is basically a tall pillar that is carried by a group of small fry wearing propeller hats. Once the pillar is planted, the small fry will fly in a continuous circle while raining down ink to cover the surrounding area. Other than that, they don't really attack the player and remain where they're planted. However, if the small fry are spotted before they can place their pillar, then the pillar will also be destroyed. But if it's done after the pillar has been planted, then the pillar will still remain even if the small fry are gone. For its design, I give them a 5 out of 5. I like their funky little propeller hats, and I can't imagine any other salmon working with the fish stick, so if I can't think of an improvement for the design, then I don't see why I should rate it any lower. And if they were to continue with SalmonRun for future Splatoon games, then I think it'd be cool if the small fry are also able to carry other objects besides a pillar. I definitely see its design as an opening for what else could come. As for difficulty, I give them a 1 out of 5 because they remain planted in place. They are arguably the lowest of the salmon bosses to prioritize during Salmon Run. Of course, you should definitely take them out nonetheless, because their ink that covers a surrounding area can be a nuisance in the long run, especially if you're trying to evade other salmon bosses and you find yourself slowing down because of it. But other than that, they low-key leave the player alone besides dropping ink. You could go an entire round without crossing paths with a fish stick, and sometimes they're just not worth going out of the way for. If they're nearby, then sure. If it's the first salmon boss to enter the map, but you would never catch me saying you should prioritize the fish stick. And because of this, I just don't find them all that annoying. I give them a 2 out of 5. When I'm trying to evade other salmon and I run into ink, then I get annoyed. But they're quick to deal with, so that annoyance subsides as fast as it occurs. If anything, this is another salmon boss where I get more annoyed at my teammates than the boss itself, because there are moments where we have 2 fish sticks right by the egg basket and yet everyone is ignoring them. Why are we ignoring easy eggs to meet our egg quota? As for edibility, I give them a 3 out of 5. I mentioned this before, how small fry remind me of popcorn chicken, quick little bites, and so because there is a group of them this time instead of just one, I think it's only fair that they get 3 out of 5. Following the fish stick, we have the flipper flopper, which is another armored salmon boss that wears a mask to make itself look more like a dolphin. They attack by throwing rings of ink, targeting the player, and then diving into it. Once the ring lands the ground, it covers is completely ink. You are to then paint the ring before the flipper flopper completes its attack. Failure to do so will give the flipper flopper the opportunity to do its dive attack, which can instantly splat you. But if you're able to ink the ring before this, the flipper flopper will perform its dive attack but crash into the ground instead. As a result, its armor will break and its health will drastically reduce. It will also be helplessly flailing for a bit, and that is your opening to ink it. You can also shoot the flipper flopper before it performs its attack, but this is rather tedious due to its armor and large amount of health. You're just better off inking the ring and taking it from there. For its design, I give it a 5 out of 5, but I am biased because I like dolphins, and yes, I'm aware that dolphins are not the kindest of the sea, but a part of me can't help but associate dolphins with my childhood game Endless Ocean on the Wii. Or maybe it is befitting that these salmonid want to look like dolphins, now that you can take the dolphin's reputation into consideration. I also think their design is more elegant or dainty compared to other salmon bosses, and it translates well with their fighting style. They're not a brute, and so I don't expect them to don on an extra amount of armor. As for difficulty, I give them a 1 out of 5. The only times I've been spotted by a flipper flopper are basically when I'm not paying attention because there's a lot going on and I end up getting tunnel vision for the high priority salmon bosses. The flipper flopper is definitely not one of them, and instead you can also bring it close to the egg basket, making transportation of its eggs easier. It also helps that if you were unable to defeat this boss after it crashes into the ground, it will still retain any damage that was previously made, and part of that damage is from its armor breaking, so times like these, you can just shoot it while it's in the air rather than having to ink the circle again. Same thing for being a nuisance, I give it a 1 out of 5. Only my teammates annoy me more. Shockingly, there are an amount of players in Executive that will shoot at the flipper flopper rather than ink the ring, and yes, there are regular weapons during rotation that can effectively do this, but not all, but not most, so I wouldn't recommend it. You're better off initially inking the ring to be more time efficient, and then I don't think I'd enjoy eating one. I'm sure you can, I'm sure they are edible, but because they remind me of a dolphin, I don't think I can do it, so I'm giving them a 1 out of 5. I don't think I've ever walked into Grister and was like, let me get some dolphin. It doesn't sound right. Next up is the Slamming Lid, which is one of the few Salmonid bosses that have the ability to spot other Salmonid bosses such as the Steelhead, so it's not a bad idea to keep them hanging around. But the Slamming Lid is basically a flying saucer inspired enemy. It pilots an aircraft that reminds you of one, which deploys Salmonids onto the field. It also attacks a player by slamming into the ground when a player triggers it by going beneath, hence the name Slamming Lid. And once the slam is triggered, it takes a moment before it can fly again, giving us the opportunity to get on top of the saucer and spot the pilot. However, if you take too long standing on top of the saucer, then the pilot will smack you with a soup ladle, basically shoving you off. For its design, I give it a 3 out of 5. It's another design that I don't hate, but I don't quite love it either. Maybe it's because I don't put much thought into spaceships, flying saucers, and UFOs, so the aircraft itself doesn't capture my attention, but I do think the pilot's design is fun. I like the unique hairstyle, and I think it's funny watching them fight you off with a soup ladle if you stand on top of the lid for too long. But I think if they wanted me to rate it higher, it'd be neat if they deployed their own special type of salmonids rather than just regular salmonids we see on the field already. As for difficulty, it's another 1 out of 5. It's very straightforward what they do and how to defeat them, and if you're on a high ledge as well, you can defeat them without having to trigger their attack. I would say though, the most tricky part about them is learning how to use them to your advantage against other salmon bosses, for example, working on the timing for slamming them against a steelhead or steel eel. And then 1 out of 5 for being annoying. Basically for the reasons listed previously, even with multiple slamming lids on the field, they don't take long to wipe out, and sometimes it's a good strategy to keep one to wipe out other salmon bosses. As for being edible, I would give it a 2 out of 5 because if I went to a restaurant and they gave me just one fish on a plate without any sides, I'd be mad. It is a very unappealing dish. I want more. And speaking of more, this boss will give you just that. It's the Big Shot. These Salmonid bosses appear near the shore to launch their Big Shot launcher. This launcher is then loaded with cannonballs carried in from the sea, which it loads into the launcher and fires, resulting in an attack that is similar to the Wave Breaker, as it produces 2 shockwaves when it lands. Other than that, this enemy is rather passive. Its sole purpose is to go back and forth between its launcher and the sea to refill it. Because of that, you might have to wait to attack the Big Shot if they're still in the sea, but the payoff is you're then able to use its launcher to shoot eggs near the egg basket and any other eggs. For its design, I give the Big Shot a 5 out of 5. I like the handyman look, the plumber, it suits their fighting style. Like, you can tell they just want the day to get over with, and I think it's neat how their hair from a distance makes it look like they're wearing a green hat. They also wear turquoise overalls, and we don't have many salmonists that are donning on the fit, but they are wearing it well, and it still matches their vibe for Salmon Run. As for difficulty, I give them a 3 out of 5. There are times where it's a 2 for me and times where it's a 3, but I'm leaning towards 3, mostly because I think their attack works well combined with other Salmonid bosses. They're definitely in the middle for bosses to prioritize. For example, one time I was dodging the Big Shot's shockwaves, and then a scrapper came out of nowhere and shoved me, so I got smacked by the shockwave. And then depending on your weapon, it can be very ink consuming to take them out, but if you got heavy hitter weapons in rotation, or a roller for instance, then you're handling it with ease. So basically, don't let your charger handle the Big Shot, let them go for the steelhead. And then for being a nuisance, I give them a 5 out of 5. When I'm with a team that knows what they're doing, this goes down to like a 2 or 3, but sadly, that's not the case most of the time. And so, I deal with Big Shots being a problem a lot because my teams will let multiple Big Shots surface, not just one. And by themselves, it's not bad, but they definitely add to the problem when you're escaping flyfish and have a steel eel on your tail, and now you gotta avoid shockwaves. Their attack shines a lot in my opinion when you're overwhelmed already with other Salmonid bosses. As for eating, I give them a 5 out of 5. I said earlier I want more, and this gave me more. You put a Big Shot on my plate and I'm happy. Just give me rice, give me my sides, and it's complete. I'm sure Grisco would agree if he wasn't so obsessed with the eggs. finally, we have the Mudmouths, the regular and golden Mudmouth. These are another boss that only appear in special waves. For regular Mudmouths, they spawn lesser salmonids such as the chum, but golden Mudmouths will spawn coalhawks out of its mouth. To defeat this boss, you need to throw a spot bomb into its mouth, but a weapon like the exploser can just attack the Mudmouth straight on. Just make sure your aim is correct. For its design, I give them a 5 of 5. I love it. I think they might be my favorite special wave in Salmon Run. And I also had a slime face when I was a kid, so I have a special spot for the slime-like critters. Exhibit A, Maple Story, which was another child game of mine. Please bring back Maple Story 2, I'm begging you, I miss my avatar. As for difficulty, I give them a 1 out of 5. Especially if you have an exposure on your team, just make sure to be aware of your surroundings so any salmonids that spawn, such as small fry, don't sneak up on you. And make sure to get those eggs in the basket. As for being annoying, I give it the same rating, 1 out of 5. I mean, I did say it might be my favorite special wave, so I don't think this is shocking. But for eating, absolutely not, 0 out of 5. I think people who want to eat a Mudmouth are the same people who ate glue as a kid. And in fact, I need an adult to watch you, keep an eye out for you. With that said, let me know how you would have rated the following Salmonid bosses. Were there any designs that I love but they personally weren't your fave, or vice versa? And as always, have an amazing day. This is Little Lemon Drop dropping out. See ya, bye bye, and remember to stay hydrated.